So the SNP's Mhairi Black has caused a bit of a stir this week at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. She has compared gender-critical feminists to white supremacists and has said they're all a bunch of old Karens and they should all shut up, essentially. Candice, are you surprised by this comment in any way?
No, not really. I mean, I find it hilarious, though, that she likes to call them horrible old bigots, but then calls them Karens, as if, it doesn't matter. They're just old middle-aged women. Who wants to listen to them? Her whole dismissal of them as well. It's clear that she's never really looked into it, because if she had, she would see they were about as far from white supremacy as you can possibly get. I mean, in fact, a lot of the gender-critical women actually came from the left, and their concerns were about the mental health of teenagers, homophobia, and women's rights.
That's disgusting.
I know, it's disgusting, those Karens. And, I think they've been quite disciplined in how they've framed it as well, being very careful not to attack trans people themselves, just saying these are our concerns. But of course, no one's really listened to them, which has been such a problem. Someone like J.K. Rowling has been so thoughtful in her critique and has tried time and time and time again to say, this is where I'm coming from.
People don't actually want to listen to what she's saying and just hear something else instead, I guess.
Yes.
Luke, Mhairi Black has got a bit of a history of being, I guess you could say, a trans zealot. There's quite a famous case where she brought a drag queen called Flowjob to a local primary school in her constituency. What do you think brings a member of parliament to do such a thing, to sort of lose their minds in such a way?
I have no idea. But I think it's worth just pausing to reflect on the irony that trans activists tend to present trans people as uniquely persecuted and vilified. But actually, when you look at what is actually happening to gender-critical feminists in this country, it's absolutely revolting. They are arrested, spoken to by the police, interviewed in connection with hate crime, and then have to face mobs of angry people whenever they try and speak, face cancellation, face complete vilification, and yet they continue to make their argument. And the reason why I think that's important to mention, threatened with violence. We've seen real threats of violence against these women, all for speaking their mind. And whether you agree with them or not, the fact that there is a group of women who are willing to stand up in the face of such opprobrium and danger, I think it's fair to say danger, and to still make their point, I think they are to be commended. And this Mhairi Black remark, it's interesting that she feels so relaxed in saying something so aggressive and violent in public, because it illustrates the wider context of her remark. It illustrates the kind of environment that gender-critical feminists are facing. And I think we just need to take a moment to recognise their bravery and continuing to make their arguments in spite of people like Mhairi Black.
Definitely. And in the same week, also at the Edinburgh Fringe, Mhairi Black's SNP colleague, Joanna Cherry, she's speaking today on the day we're recording this, and her Edinburgh show has needed all this extra security. It's needed airport-style scanners, bag searches. They even stopped serving alcohol during her particular interview or in conversation, in case people get rowdy, in case people want to, start something. I mean, that's crazy. That's the world we're living in. The complete contrast where Mhairi Black is free to just denounce people.
Yes, and I think you'd have to be willfully ignorant not to recognize that and not to see that as a reality. I mean, Maya Forstater, one of the most prominent gender-critical feminists, actually had to fight legally to get it recognized as a legitimate point of view. And that is so true. That's the environment that they're in. I think though the problem is it's so tribal. This is one of the most tribal debates, and it really is a fight. And it's really, really difficult for there to be any center ground on it whatsoever. You're either for or you're against. And that's one thing that I've really felt being in this debate. There's very little opportunity actually for both sides. Well, no, I think the gender critical feminists do show a little bit of empathy towards the other side, but the other side shows absolutely no empathy whatsoever towards them. And there's just no recognition or awareness that they're good people who've just come to a different conclusion. That is completely lost. I mean, they're just vilified, they're demons, and if anything is permissible against them.
And you brought up J.K. Rowling earlier. We should talk a bit about her, because there's last week, I think it was, in Seattle, the museum of, essentially a pop culture museum, has erased her name from its Harry Potter exhibit. on the grounds that, according to the museum's curator, that she is super hateful, not just plain old hateful, she's super hateful. And similarly, a bit like Mhairi Black, she's alleged that J.K. Rowling is putting in racist tropes into Harry Potter, that she likes to fat shame people, all kinds of, spurious accusations to the ends of essentially erasing Rowling's contribution to literature.
And all of this vilification, all of this cancellation, all of these attempts to silence actually only come from one side. It's from the trans activist side towards gender critical feminists. I've never heard a gender critical feminist call for anyone to be hurt, call for anyone to be cancelled, call for anyone to be censored, call for anyone to be removed from a panel. They just don't do that. They want the debate.
In fact, they like to hear, the other side, because often when people hear it for the first time, you realize how crazy it is. Yeah. Some of the best, most enlightening moments have been in various court battles where trans ideologues have tried to make a case for their position, in the case, with Mermaids versus the LGBT Alliance, for instance. And they just sound ridiculous. So everyone wants them to speak, actually.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes, well, that's maybe why they shut down debate. I mean, they know that their position is actually quite weak and won't stand up to scrutiny. They don't want to be scrutinized.
And Luke, finally, do you think the tide is turning slightly? It seems as if Labour is finding its way to a more sensible position. Keir Starmer can say that a woman is an adult human female without mentioning that maybe 0.01% of them might have a penis.
I mean, that is the hope, isn't it? But even if the main political parties get some semblance of sense about this, there is still a huge fight to be won. I mean, the progress that needs to be made to even have this discussion in a reasonable and rational way without people having to fear for losing their livelihoods, I think we still have some way to go. But hopefully, as you say, times are changing.